The winter forest of Montana groaned beneath a rising blizzard, a white storm swallowing sound and distance alike. Garrett Flint McRae tightened the wool scarf at his neck as he stepped out onto the small porch of his remote cabin, the cold biting through even his thick layers. At 60 years old, Flint carried the weight of years most men never saw, broad-shouldered with a square jaw, softened only by the uneven growth of a salt and pepper beard he often forgot to trim. His hair was a deep, wind-blown grey that fell over eyes the colour of storm clouds. The military bearing had never left him. Straight-back, careful steps, senses tuned like a taut wire. Even in the quietest hour he moved as if expecting something to break out of the tree line. For Flint, that expectation had once been survival during Operation Desert Storm in 1991. Now it was habit carved into bone. Combat in Iraq had carved the hardness into him, while the loss of his handler partner, Corporal James Ironside Brennan, killed during an ambush outside Basra, dulled the edges and pushed him towards silence. The forest was the only place where the noise inside him had somewhere to escape. Beside him, Iron padded out into the snow, leaving clean prints behind. The 6-year-old German Shepherd was large for his breed, all muscle and instinct, with a coat of grey and white fur that made him resemble a timber wolf. His ears were always alert, swivelling toward the smallest rustle, and his amber eyes, sharp, intelligent, and unsettlingly expressive, missed nothing. Iron had been a military working dog, once deemed too protective for civilian adoption after his handler retired. But with Flint, he had found purpose. The two shared a quiet bond. No commands needed, no affection performed for show, only an unspoken understanding stitched together by solitude. The cabin where Flint had lived for the past 16 years sat nestled in a natural hollow surrounded by towering ponderosa pines that had stood for 3 centuries. He'd chosen this location with tactical precision, high ground to the east for observation, creek to the west for water, multiple egress routes through dense forest. Old habits from Baghdad safe houses translated well to Montana wilderness. The structure itself was modest but meticulously maintained. Single-story, hand-built from local timber in 2010 after Flint had saved enough from his army pension and disability payments. 1,200 square feet, including a bedroom, small bathroom, kitchen that opened into a main living area and a storage room he'd converted into a makeshift office. The walls were lined with maps, topographical surveys of Absaroka Range wildlife migration patterns he'd documented, and the 23 red marks indicating illegal logging sites he'd discovered over 4 years of solitary patrol. This was more than a home. It was a fortress of solitude where a man who'd seen too much violence could finally find something resembling peace. The wind gusted harder, rattling the porch railing. Flint exhaled, watching the breath leave him in clouds, and was about to turn inside when a faint crackle drifted from the old emergency radio on his belt. The device was outdated, sun-bleached plastic duct tape over the battery latch, but it was reliable enough that he kept it powered whenever storms rolled across the mountains. Tonight, it hissed, then sputtered, then delivered a thin, trembling voice. "Help vehicle off the road. Someone, please." The transmission broke into static. Flint froze, every muscle tightening. Iron's head snapped toward him, ears pricked. Then came the deep, instinctive growl, the one that meant something is wrong. Flint lifted the radio closer. "Repeat. Give location." Static answered. Another gust of wind cracked through the pines like a falling tree. Flint scanned the forest, though he knew he would see nothing. Visibility was dropping by the minute. The trails would soon be buried. Waiting was not an option. He grabbed his parka from inside, shrugging it on, while Iron ran in small, anxious circles at the door. The dog knew the rhythm of emergencies in a way words could never teach. "Truck! Iron!" Flint ordered. Iron sprinted out ahead, leaping through drifts toward the old green pickup that Flint kept chained to a boulder so storms wouldn't shove it down the slope. The veteran unlocked it, shoved the passenger door open for the dog, and climbed in. The forest road was already disappearing under thickening snow. Flint leaned forward, gripping the wheel hard enough that his knuckles whitened. He drove with the caution of a man who had seen too many people die by inches. Slow, deliberate eyes scanning for movement. Iron braced himself against the dash muscles, tense. The thermometer on the dashboard read -18 Fahrenheit. At this temperature, a person stranded without shelter had maybe 2 hours before hypothermia became irreversible. Maybe less if they were injured or wet. Flint pushed the truck as fast as he dared, balancing speed against the very real risk of sliding off the narrow road into a ravine. After 15 agonizing minutes and another fading radio pulse, they reached the narrow path leading to an old logging road that few used anymore. The track had been abandoned in 2018 after environmental groups successfully sued to halt operations, leaving behind rutted earth and stumps like broken teeth. Flint knew it well. He'd documented the destruction here, photographed the erosion patterns, sent reports to every agency that might care. Most hadn't. There, illuminated in the whirl of snow and his truck's headlights, Flint spotted it, a dark Mercedes SUV, nose buried in a drift, one rear tire hanging frighteningly close to a cliff edge. The vehicle was expensive, current model year, absolutely wrong for this terrain and weather. The kind of SUV driven by people who thought four-wheel drive meant invincible. He slammed the truck into park. Iron leapt out first, barking once a sharp alert. Flint rushed forward through knee-deep snow and yanked the passenger door open. Inside sat a woman curled stiffly against the seat, her breath fogging the air in small, frightened bursts. She looked around 31 or 32 with chestnut-brown hair pulled into a messy tie, strands frozen to her pale cheeks. Her skin bore the washed-out look of cold sinking too deep, and her wide hazel eyes darted from Flint to Iron with desperation, but not fear. I'm Claire. Claire Holloway," she stammered, clutching her ankle. "I got lost." "The roads. My GPS died. I hurt my leg. I can't walk. I'm a travel blogger. I wasn't supposed to be this deep in the forest." Her voice trembled, not just from cold, from embarrassment, from something unsaid. Flint noted it, filing it away. He didn't believe the story entirely. Her clothes were expensive North Face jacket that retailed for $400, Patagonia base layers, sorrel boots designed more for fashion than function. Too clean for someone who had been stranded long, and her hands, even shaking from cold, showed no calluses, no dirt under the nails. Office hands. But he wasn't about to interrogate a half-frozen woman on a cliff. "Can you move at all?" he asked. She shook her head, biting back a cry as she shifted. The wind slammed into the SUV, making it rock dangerously. Through the rear window, Flint could see the cliff edge, maybe 60 feet down to a rocky creek bed. The SUV was balanced on the edge, like a coin standing on its rim. One strong gust, and it would go over. Flint cursed under his breath. The SUV wouldn't hold long. "Iron back," Flint commanded. Then he leaned in, sliding an arm under Claire's knees and another behind her back. She was lighter than he expected, maybe 120, 130, soaking wet. Her body was rigid from cold and pain. She sucked in a breath. "Please don't let me fall." "You won't," he said simply, and he meant it. Flint had carried wounded soldiers through hostile fire in Basra. He'd carried Corporal Brennan's body 300 yards to the medevac chopper, refusing to leave his friend behind, even when the position was being overrun. Carrying one injured woman through a snowstorm was well within his capability, even at 60. Iron trotted ahead, barking softly to guide them, tail rigid, constantly checking Flint's pace. The dog had done this before too, leading handlers through smoke and chaos, finding the safe path when human eyes couldn't. Training that deep didn't fade. The storm tried to shove them sideways, flinging snow like shards of glass. Flint kept his head down, focusing on each step. Don't rush. Don't slip. Get her to safety. Everything else was secondary. For a moment, Claire buried her face against his shoulder. Not for warmth, but for trust. She had no choice but to give. Flint could feel her shivering, the tremors running through her entire frame. Stage 1 hypothermia, maybe early stage 2. She needed heat-dry clothes, warm liquids, soon. By the time they reached the truck, the SUV behind them groaned, shifted and slid another inch toward the abyss. Claire turned her head weakly, watching fear prickling through her eyes. Flint didn't look back. Some sights didn't need confirmation. He'd learned that in Iraq, sometimes you had to keep moving forward and trust that what was behind you was already gone. He loaded her carefully into the cab, Iron climbing in after, with a protective rumble. The dog positioned himself between Claire and the door, body language clear. "She's packed now, I'm protecting her." Flint shut the door, braced himself against the wind, and began the careful drive back toward the only refuge for miles, the lonely cabin in the heart of the storm. The drive back took 20 minutes that felt like hours. The storm had intensified, visibility dropping to near zero. Flint navigated by memory and instinct, recognizing the shape of certain trees, the angle of specific slopes. He'd driven this route hundreds of times in all seasons and weather. The truck's heater blasted at maximum, but Claire was still shivering violently. "Stay with me," Flint said, glancing over. "What's your name again, Claire. Claire Holloway." Her teeth chattered. "Where are you from, Claire?" "Seattle. I write about travel. Small towns, scenic locations." The words came slowly, slurred slightly. Not good. "Wanted to see Montana in winter. For the blog." "Uh-huh. What's your blog called?" A pause. Too long. "Mountain Wanderer." Flint filed that away too. Hesitation usually meant deception, but hypothermia could also cause confusion, so he didn't push. Just kept her talking, kept her conscious. "Anybody know you're out here?" "My assistant, Margot. I was supposed to check in yesterday." "She'll be worried." Probably called the police already. Claire's eyes were closing. Hey, stay awake. Tell me about Seattle. What neighborhood? Capitol Hill. Small apartment. Too expensive. Her voice was fading. Claire, eyes open. We're almost there. Ian whined and nudged Claire's hand with his nose. The contact seemed to rouse her slightly. She managed to stroke the dog's head with numb fingers. Pretty dog, she murmured. His name's Ian. Military working dog, retired. He's saved more lives than most doctors. Good boy, Ian. The dog's tail thumped once against the seat. Finally, the cabin appeared through the snow like a sanctuary materializing from faith alone. Flint pulled as close to the porch as possible, killed the engine, and moved quickly. He came around to Claire's side, lifted her again. She'd stopped shivering now, which was actually worse, meant her body was giving up the fight to generate heat, and carried her inside. The storm deepened into a constant roar against the cabin's timber walls as Flint eased Claire into a sturdy wooden chair near the hearth. The heat from the cast-iron stove washed over them like a second life. The warmth painted her pale skin a flushed pink as she tried to steady her breathing. Flint moved with purpose, every action economical and precise. He'd treated hypothermia before in combat and during mountain rescues he'd assisted with over the years. The protocol was clear: gradual rewarming, dry clothes, warm fluids, monitor for shock. He set a pot on the stove, dropped in dried vegetables and strips of venison from his freezer, added water and salt. The stew would take 20 minutes, but he could give her warm broth before then. He pulled out an old military field thermometer from his medical kit. Open, he said. Claire obeyed without question, too cold to argue. He placed the thermometer under her tongue, waited 90 seconds, checked 94.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Mild to moderate hypothermia. Dangerous, but treatable. You're going to be okay, he said. But we need to get you out of those wet clothes. He moved to the closet and pulled out the stack of clothing he kept there. Thermal underwear, wool socks, flannel shirts and pants. These had belonged to his sister-in-law Mary Ann, who'd visited often in the early years after he'd built the cabin. She'd passed away from complications of winter flu in 2019, but she'd been a small woman, similar build to Claire. The clothes would fit. These were my sister-in-law's, Flint said, setting them on the table. Left them here years back. Bathroom's down the hall. Change into these. Everything. Don't try to rush, but don't take too long either. If you feel dizzy, call out. Claire nodded and stood carefully testing her ankle. Flint noticed the wince, genuine pain there at least. She limped toward the bathroom, one hand trailing along the wall for balance. While she changed, Flint worked. He added more wood to the stove, bringing the temperature up gradually. Pulled out 2 heavy blankets from the closet, set them near the fire to warm. Poured a mug of the broth that was starting to heat, tested it warm but not hot perfect. Checked the cabin's systems generator running at 70% capacity, plenty of fuel. Water pump working, windows sealed against the storm. Ian had positioned himself outside the bathroom door, standing guard. The dog's ears swiveled toward the sounds of Claire moving inside the rustle of fabric, the running of water, a small gasp that might have been pain or relief. 10 minutes later, Claire emerged wearing the borrowed clothes. The thermal shirt hung loose on her frame, the flannel pants bunched at her ankles. She looked younger, somehow more vulnerable, without the expensive outdoor gear. Better? Flint asked. Much. Thank you. She eased back into the chair. I don't know how to repay. Don't worry about it. He handed her the mug of broth. Drink this. Small sips. Your stomach might be upset from the cold. She wrapped both hands around the mug, savouring the warmth, and sipped carefully. Colour was returning to her face now, the dangerous pallor fading. Flint returned to the stove and continued working on the stew. He moved through the small kitchen with practiced efficiency, chopping, stirring, seasoning by taste and long experience. He'd lived alone for so long that cooking had become meditation, a series of familiar movements that required no thought. Ian padded across the braided rug with slow, deliberate steps. He circled once before settling in front of the fire. The German shepherd's thick grey and white fur seemed to absorb the glow, and his eyes, amber and unblinking, followed Claire as she shifted in the chair, checked her ankle again, fussed with the unfamiliar clothes. His stare held no hostility, yet it pierced her like a quiet accusation. Claire forced a small smile at him, though her chest tightened. She wasn't afraid of the dog. She was afraid of what he seemed to see. Dogs had always unsettled her slightly, not from fear of being bitten or attacked, but because they seemed to read things in people that people worked hard to hide. And right now, Claire Holloway was hiding quite a lot. Flint glanced over from the stove. Ian likes you. That's good. How can you tell? He's between you and the door instead of between you and me. Means he's decided you're pack not threat. If he thought you were dangerous, he'd be positioned differently. Claire looked at the dog with new understanding. Iron's placement was deliberate, protecting her from whatever might come through that door while still maintaining awareness of both humans. Tactical positioning. He's beautiful, she said, and meant it. How long have you had him? 5 years. Got him from a MWD rescue organization. His handler retired, didn't have space for a dog that size. Iron had been in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Explosive detection patrol work apprehension. After his handler left, they tried to rehome him with a civilian family. Flint stirred the stew. Didn't take. Iron's got protection instincts bred and trained into him. Regular family with kids couldn't handle a dog that goes from friendly to threat response in half a second. But you could. I understand where he's coming from. We speak the same language. Flint tasted the stew, added a pinch more salt. After Baghdad, after I lost Brennan, I swore I'd work with military dogs if I could. Started volunteering at the rescue. Iron and I met and... He shrugged. Just made sense. Claire studied Flint as he worked. His movements were economical, no wasted motion. Everything in the cabin had a place, and everything was in its place. Kitchen implements hung from hooks in order of frequency of use. Canned goods organized by type and expiration date. Wood stacked by the stove in a precise arrangement that maximized airflow and burn time. This was a man who'd spent decades in environments where disorder meant death. How long have you lived out here? She asked. Built the cabin in 2010, moved in permanently 2011. He ladled stew into 2 bowls, brought one to Claire with a spoon. Eat. You need calories. The stew tasted incredible, rich, savory complex. Venison cooked until tender root vegetables that had soaked up the broth herbs she couldn't identify, but tasted like the forest itself. This is amazing, Claire said between bites. Where'd you learn to cook like this? Necessity. Out here, you eat what you make, or you don't eat. Had to get good at it. Flint ate standing up, the way soldiers often did, ready to move at any moment. Supply run to town is 4 hours round trip in good weather. In winter, sometimes weeks between trips. Learning to cook with what you have isn't optional. You go to town that rarely. Once a month, usually. Stock up on what I can't hunt, grow, or forage. Otherwise, no real reason to go. Claire processed this. Once a month. That meant weeks at a time with no human contact except whatever came through on the radio. Just him, the dog, and the vast silence of the forest. Doesn't it get lonely? Flint considered this, chewing slowly. Lonely implies wanting something you don't have. I've got what I want. He gestured vaguely at the cabin, the forest beyond. Peace, quiet, purpose. Purpose? Protecting this forest, documenting the crimes committed against it, making sure someone remembers what's being lost. Claire's stomach clenched. She followed his gaze to the map on the wall, the one covered with 23 red marks. What are those? She asked, though she suspected she knew. Illegal logging sites, clear cuts on protected federal land, some going back 4 years. Flint's voice had gone flat, almost mechanical. Started noticing it in 2021. Trees disappearing where they shouldn't. Roads cut into areas marked as wilderness preservation. Contacted the Forest Service EPA senators, got nowhere. So you documented it yourself? Somebody had to. He moved to the map, pointed at various marks. This one, May 2022. 40 acres of old-growth ponderosa. This one, September, same year. 60 acres. They come in fast, strip it, leave. By the time anyone official shows up, the company's dissolved, the equipment's gone, and there's no one to prosecute. Claire set down her spoon. You know which company? Several. But one name keeps appearing in LLC registration's shell company paperwork. Flint's finger tapped the map. Holloway Timber Industries. Claire's breath caught. She managed to keep her expression neutral, but her heart was hammering. You know them? Flint asked, watching her carefully. I've heard the name. Big corporation, right? Big enough to have lawyers who make evidence disappear and politicians who look the other way. He turned from the map. Anyway, that's my purpose. Bear witness. Make sure when this is all over, someone knows what happened here. The conversation hung there, weighted with things unsaid. Claire forced herself to take another bite of stew, even though her appetite had vanished. Flint didn't press. He finished his own meal in silence, then collected the bowls and washed them in the kitchen sink. The domesticity of it was surreal, this weathered combat veteran doing dishes while a blizzard raged outside and a highly trained military dog dozed by the fire. Claire found herself studying the cabin more carefully now. What she'd initially taken for simple rustic living revealed itself as something more deliberate. The furniture was arranged to provide clear sight lines to all windows and both doors. The curtains were heavy fabric that would block light from inside being seen outside. There were 2 fire extinguishers visible, plus what looked like emergency supplies stored in labelled plastic bins along one wall. This wasn't just a home, it was a prepared position. Her eyes fell on a framed photograph on the mantel. 2 young men in desert camouflage, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. One was clearly a younger Flint Broader, less weathered but the same intense eyes. The other was smaller, stockier, with a wide, infectious smile. "Brennan," Flint said, following her gaze. "Corporal James Brennan. Best handler I ever worked with. Best friend I ever had." "What happened?" "Ambush outside Basra, February 1991. We were part of an advance team mapping positions for the main force. Intel said the area was clear." Flint's voice was steady, but his eyes had gone distant. "Intel was wrong. We took fire from 3 positions. RPGs, automatic weapons. Brennan's K9 Duke alerted us seconds before the first RPG hit. Saved the whole team. But when we tried to extract Brennan, took rounds covering our withdrawal." "I'm sorry. He died doing what he believed in, protecting his team. There are worse ways to go." Flint turned away from the photograph. "Duke made it out. Worked with another handler for 6 more years before retirement. Lived to 13. I visited him when I could. Made sure his last years were good." "Is that why you do this, the forest protection for Brennan?" "Partly. He used to say that every piece of beauty in the world is worth dying for, but more importantly worth living for. Worth standing guard over." Flint's hands flexed unconsciously, old warrior's habit. "This forest is what I stand guard over now. Instead of checkpoints and supply routes, I protect migration corridors and watersheds. Different enemy. Same principle." Claire felt the weight of guilt pressing on her chest like a physical thing. This man had dedicated years to protecting the very forest her father planned to destroy. And she was here under false pretenses, gathering the final pieces of intelligence needed to execute that destruction. Except that wasn't true anymore. Not entirely. She'd come here planning to map the terrain, confirm the GPS coordinates, file the final report that would greenlight her father's expansion. But somewhere between nearly dying on that cliff and watching this man build a wheelchair ramp in sub-zero temperatures for a stranger he'd never see again, something had shifted. Looking at those 23 red marks on the wall, 18 of which she knew for certain were her father's work, Claire felt something she hadn't experienced in years working for Holloway Timber Industries. Shame. Iron lifted his head suddenly, ears swiveling toward the door, a low rumble built in his chest. Flint moved immediately to the window, staying to the side of the frame. "What is it, boy?" Iron's growl deepened. His entire body had gone rigid, hackles raised. "Someone out there?" Claire asked, setting down her mug. "Something spooked him." Flint scanned the darkness beyond the glass. The storm had intensified visibility near zero. "Could be an animal. Elk sometimes shelter near the cabin during bad weather." But his hand had moved unconsciously to his hip, where Claire now noticed he wore a holstered pistol. Iron barked once, sharp and urgent, then moved to the door stance, aggressive. "Stay here," Flint ordered Claire. He grabbed a flashlight from beside the door, checked the pistol, a Sig Sauer P226, Claire's corporate security training recognized, and stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit him like a wall. Flint swept the flashlight beam across the clearing, the tree line looking for movement, for eyes reflecting back. Nothing. But Iron was still inside, barking, which meant the dog had heard or smelled something, even if Flint couldn't see it. He stepped off the porch boots, sinking into fresh powder. Walked the perimeter of the cabin, checking for tracks for disturbance in the snow. The storm made it difficult. Any tracks would fill in within minutes. Then he found it. On the northeast side of the cabin, partially buried by wind-blown snow tire tracks. Fresh, less than an hour old. A vehicle had been here close to the tree line engine, running long enough to melt the snow underneath before moving on. Flint's blood went cold. Someone had been watching the cabin. During the storm, while he'd been inside with Claire. He followed the tracks with his flashlight beam as far as he could see. They led back toward the old logging road, the same road where Claire had crashed. Coincidence? Flint didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. He returned to the cabin, shutting the door firmly behind him and throwing the deadbolt. Iron immediately came to him, pressing against his leg, seeking reassurance or offering it. Flint scratched the dog's ears absently, mind working through tactical problems. "What did you find?" Claire asked. Her face had gone pale again. "Tire tracks. Someone was here watching. Left maybe an hour ago." "Watching? Why would—" She stopped. Oh, God. You want to tell me what's really going on, Claire? She opened her mouth, closed it. Flint could see the calculation in her eyes, how much to admit, how much to conceal. There were men, she said finally, in the black Suburban, following me on the highway from Missoula. That's why I turned off onto the forest roads. I thought I could lose them in the back routes. And instead you crashed. Instead I crashed. She wrapped her arms around herself. When I got out of the SUV, I saw them stop on the ridge, just sitting there, not helping, just watching. You think they followed you here? I don't know. Maybe. But in this storm, she gestured at the window where snow lashed against the glass. How could they track? Flint was already moving to his desk, pulling out equipment. A handheld signal detector, basic but functional. He'd bought it years ago when he'd started documenting the illegal logging, wanted to make sure corporate security wasn't using electronic surveillance on him. He swept it over Claire's borrowed clothes first. Nothing. Then her laptop bag. The detector screamed. Flint pulled out the bag's contents methodically. Laptop, phone, wallet, papers. The signal was strongest near the bottom. He felt along the lining, found a small, hard lump sewn into the seam. He cut the stitching with his pocket knife. A GPS tracker fell into his palm. Commercial-grade, real-time transmission battery life measured in weeks. Claire stared at it in horror. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. Flint turned the device over in his hand. Question is, who put it there, and how long has it been transmitting? My father. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. It has to be. He's the only one who could. Your father. Victor Holloway, CEO of Holloway Timber Industries. The words came out in a rush, like a confession held too long. I'm not a travel blogger. I'm his chief environmental risk analyst. I came here to survey this forest because he's planning a major expansion, 2,100 acres, starting February 1st. Flint's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there before. I see. But I'm not here to help him. Claire stood abruptly, wincing as her injured ankle protested. I'm here to stop him. I've been collecting evidence for 2 years. Every bribe, every forged permit, every shell company. I have documentation that could bring down the entire operation. I was coming here to get the final GPS coordinates so the FBI would have irrefutable proof of what he's planning. And your father found out. He must have. The tracker, the men following me. He knows I'm going to betray him. Flint crushed the GPS tracker under his boot heel. Well, he knew where you were. Now he doesn't. That won't stop him. He'll send more people. He has resources you can't imagine. Private security firms, lawyers, politicians. I don't care about his resources. Flint's voice was flat. This is federal land. He's got no authority here. And as of right now, you're under my protection. Why would you help me? I just admitted I work for the company that's been destroying your forest. You said you came here to stop it. That true? Yes. Then that's all I need to know. Flint moved to his gun safe, began pulling out additional weapons. The Remington 700 hunting rifle, a Mossberg 500 shotgun, boxes of ammunition. But we need to establish some ground rules. First, no more lies. I catch you in another one, you're out in the snow ankle or no ankle. Clear? Clear. Second, you do exactly what I say when I say it. I've got tactical experience, you don't. If things go bad, you follow orders without question. Understood? Good. He loaded the weapons methodically, muscle memory from 1,000 range sessions. Now tell me everything. Start with who your father is, what he's planning, and why he's willing to track his own daughter through a blizzard. Claire sat back down, and for the next hour, she told him everything. She explained how Victor Holloway had built his timber empire through a combination of legitimate business and systematic exploitation of regulatory loopholes. How he'd cultivated relationships with senators and Forest Service officials, greasing palms and calling in favors. How the Absaroka expansion was the capstone of a 15-year strategy to control timber harvesting across 4 states. She told him about her role originally hired to assess environmental risks and ensure the company stayed within legal boundaries. How over time she'd realized her risk assessments were being ignored or rewritten. How she'd started keeping copies of the original documents building a case. She described the moment she'd discovered the Absaroka plan. 2,100 acres of old-growth forest, including critical wildlife habitat, 3 protected watersheds, and land designated as wilderness preservation. The permits had been rushed through by Senator William Morrison of Montana, a man her father had paid $400,000 over 5 years. Morrison, Flint said quietly. Will Morrison. You know him. He's my cousin, Served together in the Gulf War. He saved my life." The words came out mechanical, emotionless. "I wrote him 6 months ago about illegal logging in this region. He told me the permits were legitimate, said I was being paranoid." Claire pulled up her laptop, miraculously undamaged from the crash, and showed him the emails, the wire transfers, the documented lies. Flint read them in silence, his jaw tightening with each line. When he finished, he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the storm. "I trusted him," he said finally. "Wrote him letters about what I was seeing out here, sent photographs, GPS coordinates, documentation, and the whole time he was facilitating it. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be ready to testify." Flint turned back to her. "You said you have 2 years of evidence. Where is it?" Claire patted her laptop. "Everything. Backed up on 3 separate drives encrypted, but I haven't been able to upload it to the FBI yet. I was waiting until I had the Absaroka survey complete so they'd have the full picture. Change of plans. We upload it now, tonight." "I can't. No internet out here, and cell services. I have satellite internet, slow as hell and expensive but functional. We'll upload everything, send it to every alphabet agency you can think of, and make sure if something happens to you, the evidence still exists." Claire felt a surge of hope. "You do that? I've spent 4 years documenting these crimes with nothing but a camera and a notebook. You're offering me a chance to actually stop them." "Yes, I'll do that." He moved to set up the satellite connection while Claire organized her files. As she worked, she found herself watching Flint, the way he moved with quiet competence, the way Iron stayed close to him, the way this man who'd been betrayed by family was still willing to trust a stranger who'd lied to him. "Why?" she asked suddenly. Flint looked up from the satellite modem. "Why what? Why trust me? You barely know me. I work for your enemy. I lied about who I was. Why are you helping me?" He considered this, then shrugged. "Brennan used to say you can't judge people by where they start, only where they're heading. You started working for your father, but you're heading toward doing the right thing. That's what matters. It's not that simple. It really is." He got the connection established, nodded at her laptop. "Start uploading." And Claire, "Yeah, thank you for trying to stop this. I know what it costs to go against family." She nodded, throat tight, and began the upload. It took 3 hours to transfer all the files through the agonizingly slow satellite connection. 3 hours during which Claire organized the evidence into clear categories: financial crimes, bribery, environmental violations, conspiracy. 3 hours during which Flint stood watch, checking the perimeter cameras, monitoring the security system he'd installed years ago. Iron dozed by the fire, but even in sleep, his ears tracked every sound, ready to alert at the slightest anomaly. By 2:00 a.m., it was done. Copies of everything sent to the FBI, the EPA, the Montana Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney for Montana, and as insurance 3 major newspapers. "If something happens to me now," Claire said, closing her laptop, "the evidence still exists." "Nothing's going to happen to you." "You can't guarantee that. My father has—" "I said," Flint interrupted, his voice carrying quiet steel, "nothing's going to happen to you. Not while you're under this roof." Claire looked at him. This man who'd lost friends in combat, who'd been betrayed by family, who'd spent years alone in the wilderness trying to protect something beautiful from being destroyed. And she believed him. "You should get some rest," Flint said. "Take the bedroom. I'll stay out here with Iron." "I can't take your bed." "It's not a suggestion. You're injured, hypothermic, and exhausted. You need proper rest. Bed's through that door. Clean sheets, extra blankets in the closet if you need them." Claire wanted to argue, but recognized the futility. When Flint made a decision, it was clearly final. She stood, tested her ankle, genuinely sore now, the adrenaline having worn off, and limped toward the bedroom. At the door, she paused. "Flint." "Yeah. Thank you for everything, for saving me, for believing me, for helping me. I don't deserve any of it." "Probably not," he agreed. "But that's never been the point. Get some sleep." She closed the door behind her. Flint waited until he heard the bed creak, then moved to his desk and pulled out a detailed topographical map of the region. If Victor Holloway was going to send people, and Flint had no doubt that they'd come from one of 3 directions: the main forest road from the north, the old logging road from the west, or the fire service road from the southeast. He marked each approach, calculated response times, identified choke points and defensive positions. Then he made a list of supplies: ammunition, food, medical gear, fuel for the generator. Iron came and sat beside him, resting his heavy head on Flint's thigh. "Yeah, buddy," Flint murmured, scratching the dog's ears. I know. We're in it now. Iron's tail thumped once against the floor. Flint pulled out his satellite phone, separate from the internet connection dedicated voice line, and dialed a number he hadn't used in 15 years. It rang 4 times before a woman-answered voice, groggy with sleep. This better be good. It's 2 in the morning. Mac, it's Flint. A pause. Then, Garrett McCrae. Holy shit. Where are you? What's wrong? Montana. My cabin. And I've got a situation. Special Agent Rebecca Mackenzie was instantly alert professional. Talk to me. I've got a corporate whistleblower who just uploaded evidence of major federal crimes to your tip line. Bribery, fraud, environmental violations, conspiracy. Her father runs Holloway Timber Industries, and he's sent people to retrieve her. They were watching my cabin tonight. Jesus, is she safe? For now, but they'll be back. You need extraction. No, I need you to confirm the evidence upload and start an investigation immediately. If we wait, people disappear, records get destroyed. The window for action is now. I'll need to verify. Check your tip line. Everything's there. Financial records, recorded conversations, documentation going back 2 years. It's airtight. Another pause. Flint, what you're describing could take down a Fortune 500 company and possibly a US senator. That's going to make a lot of powerful people very nervous. I know. Which means the whistleblower is at extreme risk, and anyone protecting her. I know that too. How secure is your position? Flint looked around the cabin. Single-story log construction, good sight lines, but not fortified. Windows, multiple entry points. Defensible in the short term, vulnerable if besieged. Secure enough. For a while. FBI can have a team there in 6 hours. Maybe less. 6 hours is a long time. It's the best I can do. Nearest field office is Missoula, and they'll need to mobilize. Flint, can you hold for 6 hours? He thought about the weapons, the ammunition, irons, training, his own experience. 6 hours against professional contractors who might or might not come. I can hold. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. You're 60 years old, not 25. Wait for backup. Roger that. Flint. Yeah. It's good to hear your voice. Even under these circumstances. Same, Mac. Same. He ended the call and checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. 6 hours would put FBI arrival around 9 in the morning. Dawn was at 7:30. That meant an hour and a half of darkness, then full daylight. If Victor's people were smart, they'd come before dawn. Under cover of darkness, when Flint's sight lines were compromised and thermal imaging gave them the advantage, he needed to prepare. Flint spent the next hour fortifying the cabin. He moved furniture to create barricades at windows, stacked firewood against the door to slow forced entry, set up improvised alarms, empty cans on strings, tripwires made from fishing line pressure sensors borrowed from his wildlife monitoring equipment. He positioned extra magazines within reach, checked every weapon, laid out medical supplies. If someone got shot himself, Claire an attacker, he needed to be ready for field treatment. Iron watched all of this with understanding. The dog had been through this before in different deserts and cities, preparing positions before contact. He knew what was coming. At 4:00 a.m., Flint made coffee. Strong black 3 cups. Enough caffeine to keep him sharp through dawn. He was settling into the watch rotation, 30 minutes scanning the perimeter cameras, 30 minutes checking physical sight lines, repeat, when the bedroom door opened. Claire emerged, wearing the borrowed clothes, hair disheveled from sleep. Can't sleep. Shouldn't you be resting? Every time I close my eyes, I see my father's face, or those men in the Suburban, or your cousin's name on the bribery documents. She moved to the kitchen, poured herself coffee without asking. How can you be so calm? Training. Experience. Fear doesn't help, so I set it aside and focus on what needs doing. Just like that. You set aside fear. Just like that. Flint gestured at the chair across from him. Though if you want the truth, I'm not afraid for me. I've lived 60 years, most of them good enough. I'm afraid for you. For Iron. For what happens if I fail to protect either of you. Claire sat, cradling the coffee mug. You won't fail. You don't know that. I've watched you. The way you move, the way you think, the way you prepare. You're not the kind of man who fails. I failed, Brennan. You carried him out under fire. That's not failure. I didn't save him. No one could have. You gave him the dignity of not dying alone in the dirt. That counts for something. Flint was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you for saying that. They sat in companionable silence, drinking coffee, watching the storm gradually weaken as dawn approached. Iron moved between them, accepting ear scratches from both the unofficial peacemaker of the strange pact they'd formed. At 5:30 a.m., Flint's satellite phone buzzed. He checked the message. Mac confirming evidence received, investigation initiated, team en route, ETA 9:15 a.m. 3 hours and 45 minutes. They're coming, he told Claire. FBI, mid-morning. Relief washed over her face. So we just wait. We wait, and hope your father's people don't come first. But even as he said it, Iron's head came up, ears forward, the low growl starting deep in his chest. Flint grabbed the binoculars, moved to the window. In the pre-dawn grey headlights, multiple vehicles moving slowly up the forest road from the north. Claire, Flint said quietly, get to the back bedroom, take your laptop, lock the door, don't come out unless I tell you. What's happening? Company, move, now. She moved. Flint counted vehicles. 3 SUVs, black, identical to the one Claire described. They stopped at the clearing's edge, maybe 200 yards out. Doors opened. Men emerged. Flint counted 8 figures, all armed, all moving with military precision. His radio crackled to life. Mr. McCrae, we know you have Ms. Holloway. Return her to us and there's no trouble. Refuse and we'll have problems neither of us wants. Flint keyed the transmit button. Identify yourself. Brennan Voss, head of security, Holloway Timber Industries. I'm authorized to retrieve company property, both the personnel and the equipment she's carrying. She's not property. She's a human being. Semantics. She has proprietary company data. That laptop belongs to Holloway Timber. Surrender her and the computer, you go back to your morning coffee. Simple transaction. Through the binoculars, Flint studied Voss. Tall, lean, moving with the confidence of professional military or high-end private security. The 7 men with him had similar bearing. This wasn't corporate security theater. These were operators. You've got 10 minutes to consider your options, Voss continued. After that we advance. I'd prefer not to involve law enforcement, but I will if necessary. The transmission ended. Flint's mind raced through tactical options. 8 hostiles, professional-grade equipment, legal grey zone justification. His advantages: defensive position, superior knowledge of terrain, element of surprise in the form of Iron, and the fact that FBI was en route. His disadvantages: outnumbered, outgunned if it came to sustained firefight, and Claire was a civilian liability. He pulled out his satellite phone and texted Mac, hostile contact. 8 armed contractors, need immediate assistance. The response came within seconds. HRT notified. 30 men out, hold position, do not engage. 30 minutes. He could hold 30 minutes. Probably. Flint moved through the cabin doing final checks. Iron stayed close, reading his handler's tension, ready for whatever came next. In the bedroom, Claire called out, "What's happening?" 8 men, professional security, your father sent them. FBI's coming, but we need to hold them off for 30 minutes. A pause. Then, what can I do? Stay down, stay quiet. If shooting starts, get in the bathtub and don't move. Porcelain and cast iron offer the best protection. Flint. 30 minutes, Claire, just 30 minutes. He returned to the window. The 8 figures had spread out, forming a perimeter. Classic containment formation. They weren't advancing yet, but they were positioned to prevent escape. Voss's voice came over the radio again. "Time's up, McCrae! Last chance!" Flint picked up the radio. "FBI's en route. They know you're here. Whatever you're planning, it's not worth federal charges." "FBI." Voss laughed. "They're 45 minutes out minimum, probably more. We've got plenty of time to retrieve Ms. Holloway and be gone before they arrive." "You tracked them." "I track everything, McCrae. It's my job." A pause. "But here's what you don't know. We're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to prevent Ms. Holloway from making a terrible mistake. She's had a mental health crisis, stolen proprietary information, and fled to the wilderness. We're simply ensuring her safe return for psychiatric evaluation." "That's the story you're going with. It's the truth, and we have documentation from her psychiatrist to prove it." Flint understood immediately. Victor was building a narrative, unstable daughter, paranoid delusions, theft of company property. If Claire was declared mentally incompetent, her testimony would be worthless, and the evidence could be challenged as the product of a disturbed mind. "She's not going with you," Flint said. "Then you're obstructing a legal operation and harboring a fugitive. Your choice, McCrae. But think carefully. You're a decorated veteran with a clean record. Don't throw that away for someone you met 12 hours ago." The radio went silent. Flint checked his watch. 6:02 a.m. FBI ETA 6:30. 28 minutes. Iron growled. The contractors were advancing, moving in coordinated pairs. bounding Overwatch 2 move while 2 provide cover. They were coming. Flint took a deep breath, let it out slowly. All those years of training, all that combat experience distilled down to this: protect the person who can't protect themselves. Hold the line. Make every second count. He settled into position, rifle ready, and prepared to do what he'd been trained for. The waiting was over. The first shot came not at the cabin, but at the satellite dish on the roof. The crack of a rifle echoed across the clearing, followed by the distinctive sound of metal being torn apart. Through the window, Flint watched his communications lifeline fall, trailing severed cables. His satellite phone went dead, mid-text to Mackenzie. Clever, Flint muttered. No communications meant no real-time updates to FBI. They'd come eventually, but without confirmation of an ongoing crisis, they might slow down a CES plan. Every minute of delay favored Voss. The radio on his belt crackled. Voss, lost your satellite link, McCrae, unfortunate accident. Must have been Hunter in the area. Flint didn't respond. Transmitting would give away his exact position in the cabin, and right now, uncertainty was his friend. Let them wonder where he was, what he could see, what he was capable of. Here's your situation, Voss continued, his voice maddeningly calm. FBI won't come without communication confirmation. That buys us hours, maybe the whole day. You've got maybe 6 hours of daylight left, then we own the night. Thermal optics, night vision, numerical superiority. When darkness falls, this ends badly for you. Iron's growl deepened, his entire body vibrating with barely contained aggression. The dog could sense the threat tightening around them like a noose. Last offer, Voss said. Send out Ms. Holloway and the laptop. You keep your life, your cabin, your dog. Everyone walks away. Otherwise, we come in. Flint moved to the back bedroom, knocked twice. Claire, they cut our satellite. FBI is still coming, but we're dark until they arrive. The door opened a crack. Claire's face was pale but composed. How long? 30 minutes. Maybe less if they push hard. He handed her the Mossberg shotgun. You remember what I taught you. Point center mass. Don't anticipate recoil. Good. Stay in this room. If someone comes through that door who isn't me or Iron, you fire. No hesitation, no second guessing. Understood? Understood. Flint started to turn away, but Claire grabbed his arm. Wait, if something happens to you, what should I do? Won't happen. But if it does, there's a tunnel under the bed, trapdoor, goes 220 feet northeast, exits at the creek ravine. If you hear gunfire and I don't come back, wait 10 minutes, then use the tunnel. Head to the ranger station 3 miles northeast. There's a radio there that still works. You dug a tunnel. Started in 1993, finished 2009. After Baghdad, I swore I'd never be trapped again. He met her eyes. But it won't come to that. Just stay down, stay quiet. Let me handle this. He closed the door before she could argue. Back in the main room, Flint surveyed his defensive position. The cabin had good bones, log construction, solid timber, small windows that limited entry points. But it wasn't a fortress. If Voss's team decided to assault seriously, they'd breach eventually. The key was making them not want to. Flint grabbed the binoculars, did a systematic scan of the perimeter. The 8 contractors had taken positions in the tree line, roughly 60 yards out. Professional spacing, overlapping fields of fire. 2 had moved to flank east and west, cutting off escape routes. They were boxing him in, patient and methodical. Through the scope of the Remington 700, Flint studied Voss. The man was in his late 30s, fit with the squared-away appearance of prior military. Probably Army or Marines, judging by his movement patterns. Maybe a Ranger or Marine Recon. Not special operations, those guys moved differently, but definitely Tier 2 trained. The other 7 were similar. Professional contractors probably pulling down 6 figures annually for this kind of work. Men who'd served their country, gotten out and discovered they had no marketable skills beyond controlled violence. Flint understood them, because he could have been them. If he'd made different choices after leaving the army, he might be the one taking corporate money to intimidate whistleblowers. The thought made him sick. His watch read 6:14 a.m., 16 minutes until FBI arrived. Maybe. The radio crackled again. This time a different voice. Older, refined, carrying unmistakable authority. Mr. McCrae, my name is Victor Holloway. I believe you're currently harboring my daughter. Flint's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. I understand this situation seems complicated. Victor continued, his tone almost avuncular. But the truth is quite simple. Claire is unwell. She's been under psychiatric care for paranoid delusions related to work stress. Her doctor, Dr. Patterson, has been treating her for 6 months. I have documentation. Flint knew manipulation when he heard it. The detail about 6 months was meant to sound specific, credible. The doctor's name was there to give it weight. All classic gaslighting tactics. She's stolen proprietary company information, Victor went on, and fled to the wilderness in a manic episode. We're simply trying to get her the medical help she needs. Surely as a veteran who understands mental health challenges, you can appreciate our concern." The manipulation was smooth practiced. Appeal to Flint's military background, his likely familiarity with PTSD and mental health struggles. Make him question whether he was helping or enabling. It might have worked if Flint hadn't spent 3 hours reviewing Claire's evidence. Financial records didn't lie. Wire transfers were objective facts. And the Absaroka expansion plans weren't delusions, they were mapped in precise GPS coordinates. "Mr. McCrae," Victor said, and now steel entered his voice. "You're a decorated veteran with an honorable service record. Don't throw that away for a disturbed woman you met yesterday."
"Send her out. Keep your dignity intact, and we'll pretend this never happened." Flint picked up the radio, keyed the transmit button. "No." Single word, unambiguous. The radio went silent for 5 seconds. Then Victor's voice returned, all pretense of warmth gone. "Then you've chosen poorly. Mr. Voss, proceed with extraction, by any means necessary." Through the binoculars, Flint saw the contractors react immediately. They'd been waiting for that order. 2 teams of 2 began advancing in bounding overwatch, while the remaining 4 provided cover. Iron barked sharply, combat alert. Flint moved to the window, staying to the side of the frame. Brought the Remington up, settled his breathing. Through the scope, he tracked the lead contractor, a stocky man with a tactical beard, moving in short rushes through the snow. Flint aimed carefully, not at the man, but at the ground 3 feet in front of him. Fired. The round kicked up snow and frozen earth in an explosive spray. The contractor dove for cover, his partner freezing mid-stride. "Warning shot," Flint said into the radio. "Next one won't be." "You just assaulted a security professional," Voss replied. "That's a federal crime. Self-defense. 8 armed men advancing on my property. Montana has strong castle doctrine laws. Look it up." He fired again, this time between the 2 western flankers. Both went prone immediately. The advance stalled. Flint checked his watch. 6:19 a.m. 11 minutes. He could do 11 minutes. The contractors regrouped, pulling back to the tree line. Smart, they'd probed the defense, found it had teeth, and were reassessing. That would buy time. But then Flint heard it. A new sound cutting through the storm's dying winds. Helicopter rotors. "No," he breathed. Through the window, emerging from the grey dawn, a black civilian helicopter, sleek and expensive. It circled the clearing once, then began to hover perhaps 200 feet up. The side door was open. A man sat visible with a scoped rifle. Overwatch sniper. "Mr. McCrae," Voss's voice carried satisfaction now. "We have thermal imaging from the bird. We can see you, we can see Ms. Holloway in the back bedroom, we can see your dog. You're surrounded, outmaneuvered and outgunned. This is your last chance. Send her out." Flint's mind raced. The helicopter changed everything. With thermal imaging, they could track his movements inside the cabin, coordinate their assault, direct fire through walls. The advantage of defensive position had just evaporated. He needed a new plan. "Claire," he called toward the bedroom. "Trapdoor under the bed. Go. Now." "What about you?" "I'll cover your withdrawal. Move." He heard scrambling furniture being shoved. Good. Iron was at his side, ears flat, every muscle tensed. The dog knew the situation had deteriorated. "Sorry, buddy," Flint murmured. "This is going to get loud." The contractors were advancing again, emboldened by air support. Flint tracked them through the scope. 4 approaching from the north, 2 from east and west. He fired 3 times in rapid succession, suppressive fire keeping them cautious. They dove for cover, but kept coming leopard crawling through the snow. Return fire shattered the front window. Flint dropped glass raining down. He crawled to a different position, came up at the east window, fired twice more. The cabin filled with the smell of cordite and splintering wood. Iron barked frantically, rear approach. Someone was trying to flank through the back. Flint spun, brought the rifle to bear. A contractor was at the back window trying to pry the boards loose. Flint fired into the window frame deliberately high, but close enough to make the point. The contractor fell backward, scrambled away. But they were closing the noose. Front sides back. With the helicopter overhead coordinating, it was only a matter of time. "Claire," Flint yelled. "You in the tunnel?" "Yes, but I'm not leaving you." "You don't have a choice. Go to the ranger station radio for help. That's an order." A bullet punched through the wall 2 feet from Flint's head. The sniper in the helicopter had spotted him through thermal, was directing fire. Flint dove behind the overturned table he'd positioned earlier. His mind was calculating ammunition, maybe 15 rounds left in the rifle, 2 magazines for the SIG shells for the Mossberg he'd given Claire. Not enough for a sustained firefight. The radio crackled. "McCrae, you can't win this. Come out with your hands up, we'll let you live. Stay in there and we're coming in hard." Flint looked at Iron. The dog stared back with absolute trust, ready to follow him into whatever came next. "Not your fight, buddy," Flint said. He pointed at the bedroom. "Claire, guard, go." Iron whined, reluctant. "Go." The dog obeyed, reluctantly padding toward the bedroom, toward the tunnel, toward safety. Flint was alone. He checked his watch. 6:27 a.m. Maybe 3 minutes until FBI arrived. If they were still coming. If they hadn't been delayed. If Voss hadn't somehow intercepted them. Too many ifs. Flint made his decision. He couldn't win a defensive fight. The cabin was compromised. His ammunition limited, his enemy overwhelming. But he could buy time. He grabbed the SIG, stuffed the spare magazines in his pockets, and took one last look around the cabin. 16 years of life here. 16 years of peace after decades of war. Worth it. He moved to the front door, threw it open, and stepped out onto the porch, hands raised high, pistol dangling from one finger by the trigger guard. "Cease fire," he called. "I'm coming out, don't shoot." The gunfire stopped. Voss emerged from the tree line, weapon raised but not aimed. "Where's Ms. Holloway?" "Gone. Tunnel under the cabin. Exits at the creek. She's got maybe a 10-minute head start on you." Voss's expression flickered with anger.
"You let her escape. I let her run. Whether she gets away depends on how fast your people move," Voss barked into his radio. 3 contractors immediately peeled off, heading toward the creek at a run. "And the laptop," Voss demanded. "With her. You just made this much worse for yourself." "Maybe." Flint lowered his hands slowly. "Or maybe I just bought enough time." "Time for what?" The sound of heavy rotors answered him. Different from the civilian helicopter. Deeper, more powerful. 3 Black Hawk helicopters appeared over the ridge, coming in fast and low. FBI hostage rescue team. Voss's face went white. "Shit." The Black Hawks descended like vengeance, wrapped in rotor wash, flattening the snow in violent spirals. Before they'd fully touched down, operators in full tactical gear were fast roping to the ground. Flint counted 16 HRT personnel moving with fluid, lethal precision. "Federal agents!" a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "Drop your weapons!"
"Hands on your heads, now!"
Voss and his contractors froze. The calculation was instant fight the FBI and go to prison forever, or surrender and maybe walk on a technicality. Weapons dropped. Hands went up. The team leader, a compact woman in her 40s, approached Flint directly. "Garrett McCrae." "That's me." "Special Agent Kim Reeves, HRT. You all right?" "I'm fine, but the package is in the wind. She's heading northeast through a tunnel system coming up at the creek ravine. 3 hostiles pursuing." "Already on it." Reeves spoke into her radio. "Alpha team, pursue northeast vector, 3 targets chasing a civilian female. Secure the package, detain pursuers." She turned back to Flint. "Your cabin?" "Mine. They shot my satellite dish, tried to breach. I held them off until you arrived." Reeves looked at the shattered windows, the bullet holes, the tactical defensive positions Flint had created. A thin smile crossed her face. "Hell of a stand, McCrae."
For a 60-year-old retired soldier. 61 in March. Even more impressive.
Around them, FBI operators were zip-tying the contractors, reading them rights, confiscating weapons. Voss stood silent, jaw clenched, knowing his lucrative security career had just ended. "Where's your dog?" Reeves asked. "Sent him with Claire, through the tunnel. He's protecting her." "Smart," Reeves's radio crackled. "Alpha team package secured. Civilian female safe, pursued subjects in custody. 1 MWD providing protection. Very good boy, request dog treats." Despite everything, Flint smiled. "You hear that?" Reeves said. "Your dog's a hero. He's had practice." Another Black Hawk landed, this one carrying additional personnel. A familiar figure emerged, Special Agent Rebecca Mackenzie, older than Flint remembered, but unmistakable. "Mac," Flint called. She strode over, shook her head in disbelief. 15 years of silence, then you call me at 2 a.m. with a corporate conspiracy and a hostage situation. You don't do anything halfway, do you? Didn't seem worth the call for anything less. Your whistleblower. Safe, in your people's hands. And the evidence? Uploaded hours ago. Check your tip line. Should be waiting. Mackenzie pulled out her phone, scrolled, her eyes widening. Jesus, this is a RICO case. Major fraud, bribery, environmental crimes. McCrae, you just handed us the biggest corporate takedown in a decade. Claire handed it to you. I just provided tactical support. Tactical support? Mackenzie laughed. Is that what we're calling holding off 8 contractors and a helicopter gunship until the cavalry arrived? Seemed like the polite term. They stood in the clearing as dawn broke, fully turning the snow from grey to gold. FBI operators were systematically documenting the scene, photographing evidence, securing the perimeter.
One approached Reeves, holding something. "Ma'am found this in Subject Voss's vehicle. Encrypted radio frequency hopping. Sophisticated gear. Bag it. All of it." The operator moved off. Reeves turned to Flint. "We're going to need your statement. Full debrief. Probably take most of the day." "Understood. And we'll need to secure your cabin as a crime scene. You'll need alternate accommodation." Flint looked at the structure he'd built with his own hands, now bullet-scarred and violated. "How long?" "Week, maybe 2. We'll try to expedite. I've got a tent and a sleeping bag. I've lived in worse. The Bureau can provide. I'll camp. On my property, if that's acceptable." Reeves studied him, this man who'd held an impossible position against impossible odds, who'd sent a stranger to safety while staying behind to face the consequences, who wanted nothing more than to remain on the land he'd sworn to protect. "That's acceptable," she said quietly. "We'll make sure you have what you need." The remainder of the day passed in a blur of official procedure. Flint gave his statement 3 times, once to Reeves, once to Mackenzie, once to a federal prosecutor who'd been helicoptered in from Missoula. He walked them through everything, finding Claire, discovering the tracker, the evidence upload, Voss's assault, the defensive stand. Claire gave her statement separately somewhere in a mobile command unit the FBI had erected in the clearing. Flint saw her twice, once when she emerged briefly for air, her eyes finding his across the chaos, and holding for a long moment that contained more gratitude than words could express. Once when Iron bounded over to Flint, tail wagging, before returning to Claire's side like he couldn't quite decide who needed protecting more. By evening, most of the FBI presence had withdrawn.
Reeves left a 2-person security detail. "Just until we're certain there are no secondary threats," she explained, and promised to return the next day to coordinate further. Flint set up his tent on the east side of the clearing within sight of the cabin, but far enough away to let the forensics team work. Basic 4-season mountaineering shelter. Nothing fancy, but it would keep him dry and reasonably warm. As he was arranging his sleeping bag, footsteps crunched through snow behind him. Claire escorted by one of the FBI agents. 5 minutes, the agent said, stepping back to provide privacy while maintaining security. "Hey," Claire said. "Hey yourself. You okay?" "Physically, yes. Mentally." She laughed, a little wild around the edges. "I just watched my father order men to assault a federal officer. I'm going to be testifying against him in court, and I owe my life to a man I lied to within hours of meeting him." "You didn't lie. You omitted. Different thing."
"That's generous. It's accurate." Flint finished with the sleeping bag, turned to face her fully. "What happens now?" "For you. FBI wants me in protective custody until the trial. They're worried about retaliation, intimidation. I'll be moved to a secure location, probably in D.C. Could be months before the case goes to court." "Makes sense. What about you?" Flint gestured at the tent, the forest, the mountains beyond. "Same as always. Wait for them to finish with my cabin, move back and continue documenting what happens here. The logging hasn't stopped just because your father got arrested." "Actually, it has. At least for Holloway Timber. The company's been placed in receivership pending investigation. All operations suspended. Every active site across 4 states shut down immediately." Claire's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears or triumph. "You did it, Flint. You actually stopped them." "We did it. Without your evidence, this was just one angry veteran with a camera. Without your protection, I'd be in a psychiatric facility being declared incompetent." They stood in the gathering darkness, aware of the FBI agent waiting nearby, aware this might be the last time they saw each other for months. "Iron," Claire said suddenly. Would it be okay if I said goodbye? He'd never forgive me if you didn't." Flint called the dog over. Iron came immediately, tail wagging, moving between both of them like he had all day, unable or unwilling to choose. Claire knelt in the snow, wrapping her arms around the shepherd's thick neck. "You saved my life, buddy, multiple times. Thank you. Thank you so much." Iron leaned into her tail, going still, just accepting the affection with the Grace dog somehow always managed. When Claire stood, she was definitely crying. She didn't try to hide it. "When this is over," she said to Flint, "when the trial's done and the company's dissolved and I can actually build the life I want instead of the one my father planned, I'm coming back. Back here. Montana needs environmental protection organizations that actually care about preservation instead of profit. I'm going to build one, and I'm going to need a deputy chief ranger who knows this forest better than anyone alive." Flint raised an eyebrow. "That a job offer? That's a promise. This forest saved me. You saved me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure both stay protected." The FBI agent stepped forward.
Ms. Holloway, we need to move. Transport's waiting. Claire nodded. She looked at Flint one more time. Thank you. For everything. For believing me when you had no reason to. For protecting me when you had every reason not to. You were trying to do the right thing. That's all the reason I needed. She started to turn, stopped.
The ramp. The wooden ramp you built. I saw it before they took me to the command center.
What about it? It's still there, despite the bullets and the assault, still standing. She smiled. I'm going to remember that. Trust has to be built with care and tested under weight. You taught me that. Then she was gone, escorted to a black SUV that rolled away toward whatever safe house the FBI had arranged. Flint stood in the clearing with Iron, watching the taillights disappear. Well, buddy, he said to the dog, guess it's just us again. Iron leaned against his leg, solid and warm and uncomplicated. Flint scratched the dog's ears and looked up at the stars beginning to emerge through the clearing clouds. Tomorrow, he'd start rebuilding. Again. But tonight he'd done what Brennan had asked all those years ago. Protected something beautiful. Kept faith with those who couldn't protect themselves. Stood guard over what mattered. That was enough. 6 weeks later, Flint sat in the witness waiting room of the Russell Smith Federal Courthouse in Missoula, Montana. The building was all marble and American flags built to remind everyone that justice, when it chose to act, did so with appropriate gravity. He wore his dress uniform, Army Class A's, the only formal attire he owned. The ribbons felt heavy. Purple Heart Bronze Star Iraq Campaign Medal. Reminders of a different life, different wars. Iron lay at his feet wearing a service dog vest the FBI had provided. Not technically legal since Iron wasn't certified, but nobody was going to argue with a dog who'd helped dismantle a criminal conspiracy. The door opened. Claire entered, transformed. Charcoal grey suit hair in a severe bun, minimal makeup. Professional. Corporate. Every inch the executive she'd been before this started. But her eyes warmed when she saw Flint. Hey. Hey yourself. Flint stood. You ready? No. But I'm testifying anyway. She sat beside him, close enough their shoulders touched. Prosecution says I'm their star witness. 4 hours scheduled. You've been preparing for weeks. Doesn't make it easier. Her voice dropped. He's still my father. Flint understood. Victor Holloway was a criminal who'd ordered his daughter killed. He was also the man who'd raised her, taught her to ride a bike, paid for her education. Both things were true, and hearts didn't come with delete buttons for love, even when desperately needed. Claire's phone buzzed. She checked it, went pale. What? Margot. Emma's school just went into lockdown. Anonymous bomb threat. Flint's blood went cold. From where? Unknown number. But... Her hands shook. Victor's lawyer visited him yesterday. This is a message. FBI knows. Texting Agent Mackenzie now. But Flint was already moving, striding toward the courtroom doors. A U.S. Marshal stepped into his path. So trial's about to start.
You're a witness. That man in there, Flint said, voice low and dangerous, just threatened a third grader to intimidate witnesses. Step aside or I go through you. Choose. The Marshal looked at Flint's ribbons, his eyes the combat veteran stance radiating controlled violence. He stepped aside. Flint pushed through the doors. The gallery went silent. Judge Patricia Hendricks, 60-something, steel-grey hair, no-nonsense expression, looked up with obvious irritation. Who are you, and why are you interrupting my courtroom? Garrett McCrae, Your Honor. Prosecution witness. I need to address something immediately. Victor Holloway sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He'd lost weight in custody, orange jumpsuit hanging loose, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He smiled when he saw Flint. Mr. McCrae, Judge Hendricks said, you're out of order. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Then hold me in contempt. But first, the court needs to know that 15 minutes ago, Emma Brennan's elementary school received a bomb threat. Emma is 8 years old. Her mother, Margot Brennan, is testifying against the defendant today. This is witness intimidation during an active trial. The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Order Marshal, verify this claim immediately. A security officer spoke into his radio, listened, went pale. Your Honor, confirmed. Madison Elementary, Seattle. Full lockdown bomb squad en route. FBI on scene. Judge Hendricks turned to Victor with an expression that could shatter granite. Mr. Holloway, did you authorize any contact regarding witnesses or their families? Victor's lead attorney, Marcus Webb, 50 years of courtroom experience, stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client has been in federal custody for 6 weeks. He couldn't possibly have orchestrated. Your client? Judge Hendricks' interrupted voice like a blade. Had a visitor yesterday. Robert Keating from your firm. What was discussed during that conversation? Webb's practice neutrality cracked. Attorney-client privilege prevents, does not extend to ongoing criminal conspiracy. Threatening a child during trial qualifies. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Keating is being detained by federal marshals as we speak. He'll invoke privilege when FBI questions him about conspiracy to intimidate witnesses. Shock rippled through the gallery. Claire's hand found Flint's, squeezed hard. Mr. Holloway, under oath, did you have any knowledge, direct or indirect, about the threat made against Madison Elementary this morning? Victor met the judge's eyes. 10 seconds of silence. Then he smiled. Not nervous, not guilty. The smile of a man who'd calculated every angle. Your Honor, I'm a father. I understand protecting children. Which is why I find it tragic that certain individuals, his eyes flicked to Claire to Margot in the gallery, would put children at risk through reckless decisions about loyalty. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving. Victor's voice was soft, almost gentle. Because what can you do? Add another charge, I'm facing 28 years. I'm 64. The math says I die in prison regardless. So threats of additional consequences? He shrugged. Meaningless. You're confessing. I'm confessing nothing. Merely observing that people who betray their families often discover loyalty works both ways. When you abandon your blood, don't be surprised if the world becomes dangerous. For everyone you care about. The courtroom exploded again. Judge Hendricks hammered her gavel. Claire stood trembling with rage. You son of a bitch! Miss Holloway, sit down, the judge ordered. But Claire didn't sit. She walked forward past the bar, straight toward her father. Marshals moved to intercept, but something in her expression made them hesitate. She stopped 3 feet from Victor. You want to know what I learned from you, Dad? Her voice was steady, cold. I learned that people with nothing left to lose become the most dangerous people in the room. You taught me that. Victor's smile flickered. So here's what happens now, Claire continued. Every asset you hid in offshore accounts, I know where they are. Every shell company, every fake charity you used to launder money documented. FBI doesn't have those files yet, but if anything happens to Margot Emma Garrett, anyone I care about, they upload automatically. Your comfortable white-collar prison becomes international racketeering. You're bluffing, Victor said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Test me. Claire leaned closer. You gambled on me staying quiet because I'm your daughter. You lost. Don't make another bet. She turned and walked back. The silence was absolute. Judge Hendricks spoke carefully. Mr. Holloway, would you like to reconsider your statement? Victor's jaw worked, calculations visible behind his eyes. Finally, I know people make regrettable decisions when scared. Perhaps Ms. Brennan should reconsider her testimony, for her daughter's sake. The admission hung like a noose. Marshal, Judge Hendricks said quietly, arrest Mr. Holloway for witness tampering, terroristic threats and conspiracy. Bail revoked. Immediate federal custody. This trial continues in his absence if necessary. As they dragged him away, Victor locked eyes with Claire one last time. No words. Just a father and daughter who'd chosen opposite sides of a war neither wanted. Then he was gone. The trial continued 3 more days. Without Victor's intimidation, witnesses testified freely. Margot Brennan's testimony, backed by thousands of internal emails, would have convicted him alone. Claire's testimony sealed it. 6 hours on the stand, methodically walking the jury through every crime, every forged document, every bribe. Her voice never wavered. When defense tried to break her with questions about family loyalty, she looked them dead in the eye. My loyalty is to the law. My father taught me that, then forgot. I'm just remembering for both of us. The jury deliberated 90 minutes. Guilty. All 47 counts. Judge Hendricks sentenced him 3 weeks later. 28 years on original charges. Witness intimidation added 10 more. Victor Holloway would be 84 before eligible for parole. He never spoke to Claire again. 9 months later. Spring came to Absaroka Range like a promise kept. Snow melted into rushing creeks, wildflowers exploded across meadows, and the forest sang with returning birds. Flint stood at the clearing's edge, watching construction workers apply finishing touches to the new cabin. Not a replacement, he'd been clear. Something new. Bigger, proper office solar panels on the roof. Modern insulation. Montana Wilderness Trust bought the land, Claire had explained when proposing the rebuild. We need a field office. You'd be doing us a favor. Uh-huh. Plus, you'd be Deputy Chief Ranger. Part-time consulting. Help patrol, document wildlife, maintain trails. Salary's terrible. Housing's a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Interested?
Housing's not much selling point since I already live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. This one has hot water that works more than 3 days a week. Sold. Now he watched Iron explore the clearing, nose to ground, tail wagging. The bullet wound had healed clean. He had a permanent limp, but the vet said he'd make it to 14 easily, maybe longer. Good bones on this old boy. He's got years left. Footsteps behind him. Claire approached carrying 2 coffee mugs. She handed one over. Mocha. 3 sugars. Never told you how I take my coffee? Iron told me.
Flint raised an eyebrow. Claire grinned. They stood in comfortable silence, watching construction. The relationship between them had evolved into something neither could name. Not romance, wrong timing, circumstances, too much shared trauma, but deeper than friendship. Combat forged bonds civilian life couldn't replicate. 3 days after the trial ended, a package had arrived at Flint's temporary housing. Small box, no return address, Claire's handwriting. Inside, a red rubber ball, indestructible rubber, perfect size for large dogs, and a note. For Iron, who trusted me when I didn't deserve it, who protected me when I hadn't earned protection. Dogs understand forgiveness better than humans. Maybe we should learn from them. See, Flint had held that ball long, turning it over. Iron sat at his feet, tail wagging, eyes locked on the red sphere. She sent you a present, buddy, Flint said quietly. Think she deserves a second chance? Iron barked once. Clear answer.
Flint threw the ball down the hall. Iron rocketed after it like his life depended on it. When the dog returned, ball proudly clamped in jaws. Flint made a decision. He called Claire. The job, he said without preamble. Deputy Chief Ranger. I'll take it. One condition. Name it. Iron gets full benefits. Veteran coverage retirement plan. He's earned it. Claire's laugh was watery, like crying and hiding it. Done. And Flint, thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. You're stuck with me for 10, 15 years minimum. Good, she said. That's exactly what I was hoping. Now, standing in the spring clearing, Claire spoke again. Margot called. Got the EPA director position in DC. 30% raise. Good for her. How's Emma? Great. Therapy helped. Kids are resilient. She paused. More resilient than adults sometimes. Yeah. Silence returned. Then Claire gestured toward the cabin.
Want to see the interior before they finish drywall?
Might as well. They walked together, Iron bounding ahead with the red ball. The foreman waved them over, pointing out details, reinforced framing, upgraded electrical bathroom that would fit full-sized humans. Office is there. He indicated a corner room with windows on 2 sides. Natural light like you asked. Flint nodded. The office would serve double-duty workspace for ranger duties, storage for documentation. 4 years of evidence hadn't stopped just because Victor was in prison. Other companies always probed boundaries, but now Flint had resources, an organization backing him, legal authority beyond angry veteran with camera. He could do real good here. They finished the walkthrough, thanked the foreman, stepped outside. The clearing had good sight lines, old habits died hard. Claire seemed to read his thoughts. Still planning another tunnel. Flint didn't deny it. Started surveying last week. Different angle, better ventilation. Should be done in 12, 14 years. Planning to be here that long. Don't have anywhere else to be. Claire bumped her shoulder against his. Good, because this forest needs you. I need you. You've got 12 employees now. Not the same. You know this land. You care the right way. Pause. Plus, Iron would miss me if you left. On cue, Iron trotted over, dropped the ball at Claire's feet, tail wagging. She threw it long. Iron bounded after it like a missile. Think he likes it? Claire asked. I think you're spoiling my dog. Our dog. Flint looked at her. Claire met his gaze steadily. Yeah, he said quietly. Our dog. They watched Iron return ball clamped in jaws, whole back end wagging. The dog dropped it exactly between them, equidistant fair, and sat looking from Flint to Claire and back, waiting for whoever wanted to throw next. Flint picked up the ball but handed it to Claire. You throw. I'll watch. Claire's eyes went bright. She took the ball wound up, sent it flying. Iron chased it like every throw was the best ever, like the world was perfect and nothing bad had happened. Maybe for dogs that was true. They lived in the now, unburdened by past or future, just the moment and joy found in simple things, chasing balls, protecting pack, being home. The foreman called, Mr. McRae, want to approve bathroom fixtures before install, be right there. Flint started toward the cabin, paused, looked back at Claire throwing the ball again, laughing at Iron's enthusiasm. You coming? Claire smiled. Yeah, I'm coming. They walked together. Iron bounded between them, ball-in-mouth eternal optimist who'd chosen both and refused to pick favorites. Above the Montana sky stretched endless and blue. The forest extended in every direction, protected by federal designation, legal firepower, and people who gave a damn. 17,000 acres where trees would grow, old wolves would hunt elk, would raise calves without chainsaws, destroying their world. And in the middle, 3 souls who'd found each other in a blizzard and decided to stay. One veteran who'd learned to trust again. One whistleblower who'd found her courage. One dog who'd always known they belonged together. The path ahead was uncertain. Rebuilding would take time. Healing would take longer. But for the first time in decades, Garrett Flint McRae looked at the future and didn't see another war to survive. He saw home, and that was enough. The Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness now encompasses 1.1 million acres of protected land in Montana. Iron retired from active duty at age 7. He lived to 14, passing peacefully in his sleep. Garrett Flint McRae continues as Deputy Chief Ranger of the James Brennan Memorial Wilderness. He is 61 years old. Claire Holloway serves as Executive Director of the Montana Wilderness Trust, protecting over 2.3 million acres across 4 states. Victor Holloway is serving his sentence at FCI, Sheridan, Oregon. His earliest release date is 2051. He will be 89. Brennan Voss and 3 contractors were apprehended after 36 hours in the Montana wilderness. All pled guilty to conspiracy and assault. Senator William Morrison resigned, cooperated with prosecutors, served 18 months in minimum security, and is barred from public office. Margot Brennan and her daughter Emma are safe and thriving in Washington, D.C. The wooden ramp Flint built still sits on Claire's office porch. A plaque reads, "Trust like this ramp must be built with care and tested under weight." James Ironside Brennan, U.S. Army, died February 26, 1991, near Basra, Iraq. He was 24. The trail named in his honor opened May 15, 2026. His family attended the dedication. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with courage, evidence, and one loyal dog who refused to let anyone break.